Welcome to the Cap Planner podcast, where we dive into the dynamic world of private capital markets. Whether you're new to private market investing or a seasoned professional, this podcast unpacks the latest trends, insights, and opportunities shaping the industry. Featuring expert guests and deep discussions, Cap Planner is your go-to resource for staying informed and inspired. Hi, Jody.
Hi, Morgan. What's going on?
I have survived the weekend of being a golf widow from the Masters. My husband has returned home.
Rory McIlroy. What a badass he is. It just shows you, I was reading an article, I actually took a screenshot of it because I was so impressed with him. Like it just shows you that all the preparation, it said, instead of competing on tour for the past few weeks, he had spent every spare moment playing the course over and over until he knew every inch of the grounds. By the time the Masters teed off, McIlroy could have dropped a ball anywhere in that zip code and been ready to hit. That's from the Wall Street Journal. Like, you know what? That's what it takes to be successful at 10,000 hours.
Yeah. Well, also, especially because golf is so much of the course. And I was listening to his speech and when he put the jacket on, and he had said, I told you I was going to get this jacket again last year when he had won. And it's also so much of the mindset of what it is to train and to mentally prepare and to say it and then almost say it and make it so. Like, I will win again.
And also, he didn't get derailed because in one shot he hit and you were like, oh, wasn't even close. But
Saturday, he
because he
didn't
knew,
play great. But then
yeah,
Sunday, he really was like,
that's
no.
the day. I'd rather not play great in the front nine and play, great on the back nine. I mean, listen, my golfing has been really at a standstill because I'm working and there is not enough time to do both. Like there was a moment in time where I was able to get out there more, but right now I haven't seen my clubs. They're literally in the storage locker. So I did enjoy watching the
I
Masters.
find that one of the hardest pieces about golf is the mental stamina, because I personally could play 6 holes of golf and that would be the perfect round for me, but I'm
Yeah.
not the most patient person to begin with. But I do think that you can have one bad shot and then have it not ruin the hole and recover.
Yeah, and the putting is really the main thing. I had a golf when I picked up golf because I was trying to get my head wrapped around it when I was down here over here in Miami. I didn't play so much at all in San Francisco, and the golf coach that I had said, "You play for show and putt for dough." Yeah, the putting is the main thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So Masters weekend, obviously, I really also appreciate because there are no phones on the courses. So everybody who's there is really there to be present.
Focused. Yeah,
Yes. It's the
yeah, it's a
whole
great
vibe.
experience.
Yes, it's the whole vibe of it. And then, but I did spend my Saturday catching up on all sorts of trash TV, and you did send me an
Housewives.
article. Yes, I've caught up fully on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills in particular. And then you sent me an article also from the Wall Street Journal talking about masculinity. And I think the two of them really go together.
Well, masculinity from all of these shows, they reference 3 shows. The
Right.
one, Neighbors and Friends, which I have, just died laughing
With John
watching.
Hamm.
Right, with John Hamm, but basically talking about men and fighting for what they want, which actually really is tied into the Rory McIlroy thing as well, that men fight for what they want and that they are in there with a directive, and they tell themselves that they do this because they have to. And then when they have the emotional side mixed in, like these characters, what's the other one?
The other shows they talked
Rooster.
Rooster and then DTF St. Louis. Those were the 2
Right.
other shows.
Steve Carell and John Hamm, and then, what's his name? Jason Bateman. And
Correct.
basically when they throw in the emotional with the male directive, that there's a lot of short circuiting potentially.
Right. And it's interesting because on the last Beverly Hills episode, and I did get a kick because John Hamm is a big Housewives fan. So he's been in all these interviews with
How do you
Andy
know
Cohen
that?
because I
That is
see
ridiculous.
him with Bravo on and talking to Andy Cohen, and they're like discussing the Housewives. And a side note, an asterisk to it is both Andy Cohen and John Hamm are both St. Louis people, so I think that's kind of part of the connection too. But in this episode in particular, Rachel Zoe was talking about she's divorced or she's separated. I'm not exactly sure where she is in the separation process, but
Well, see,
she
no, no,
really
no, no, you are no, that's not true. You are fully aware of where she is in the separation process. She does not live with her husband. I don't know, you're not sure where they are in the divorce process.
yes, they are no longer together. I am not sure if
Correct.
they are
They
legally
are
divorced or not.
definitely
Yes, they
yes,
are definitely separated and they're on the road to having a signed legal
correct.
divorce.
He
But
lives with
one
somebody else, I think.
Yes, but she really stressed about the part it's because there's another woman in the show, Dorit, who's also separated from her husband and getting
En
divorced.
route to definitely getting divorced.
Yes, and Rachel Zoe talked about how important it is for women, married or not, to have their own money and financial independence. And the part of the conversation of where I think this loops back with the friends and neighbors piece and all these other TV shows and the masculinity is that there's a whole wave of women, regardless of how you're contributing to a home, whether it's, there's a lot of different nuances, which we'll get into in a minute, but being able to access the finances, regardless of whether or not you're the breadwinner, and knowing what things cost in your household, where the dollars are going, and being an informed and active participant.
And knowing not only where the dollars are going, but where are the dollars coming from? What's funding what? How much money do you have? How much money are you saving? Is there a retirement account? And in all these cases, what Rachel Zoe said is that for her, that it's obviously she's comfortable in that she is an earner. And in these other divorces that we are seeing, like Dorit, there was seemed like there's all kinds of allegations and confusion over money and who's spending it. And she's obviously a very capable woman as well. But I have friends who I know full well because I'm in that vintage, right? Born in the 60s, that we were really, in some cases, raised to get married and have kids. And my grandmother used to say it's just as easy to marry rich as it is to marry poor. And can you imagine if I said that to you, Morgan? Like, nowhere ever would I say that to any woman. I would say, you are capable. And if you want to be a stay at home mom, that is a contribution, but you better be damn well sure about, where the money's going and saving and understanding what it costs to run your household because you cannot count on anybody else. And you have to make sure that you know how to do this.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's part of it too, where even God forbid something happens to your partner and you're not the one who's paying the mortgage each month, right? I mean, from a logistical
Right.
standpoint, you need to be able to get into an account and pay a mortgage or a water bill or a heating bill or anything that comes down to because they
You
don't
need to be able
care.
to log in and know, and that's the
Right.
part, like, in all of these, shows, especially when you see that the men can have calls to crisis, like, they talk about midlife crisis and these identity, where they're having meltdowns. As a woman, you have to be able to know, okay, if that happens because, the divorce rates are high and marriages don't last, how am I going to function? I see this where I live here in Miami, where a woman said to me, "Oh, my it's not they're not married, but they've been together for 10 plus years." And she said, "I'm on the deed in case something happens to him." I said, "That's all well and good, but do you know if there's enough money to be able to support how much does it cost to run your household every month? Your
Right.
car insurance, your like you're saying, your utilities, in our case, a homeowners." And most people don't know.
Right. And I think part of it is that you don't think to know it. Like, it's not it's a whole step further because, of course, you don't want anything bad to happen, but it's like, but
Better
it
wink up and smell the coffee because you wanna know proactively versus finding out in a
right,
duress situation, which is what the housewives are all about,
right.
and make sure that you have a good sense of it's the same thing in a company, right? What you own and how you own it.
Right, exactly. So that's part 1 of Saturday was catching up, and of course, your article made me think about the other piece of it. I did also watch the Sabrina Carpenter Coachella performance, and I was laughing because she played the song "Man-Child," and all of the men, the costumes that they were wearing, they were all dressed as dogs. I mean, it was pretty funny, and then I did read about it too, was that I saw this on Instagram, is that there were no lines for food at Coachella because so many people are taking GLP-1 drugs that nobody wanted dinner.
Well, people wanna be thin. You wanna
Right.
be, you wanna be
There we go.
hungry, or do you thin. But if you want to be thin, then you basically have to slow your roll in terms of eating. And I think the GLP-1s have definitely helped people do that.
Well, personally, I would get on a plane right now to go to California and get a burrito, so would be the person who'd be like, "Hell yeah, there's no line, I can get everything that I want from all these different places." I'd be
I
thrilled.
would go get a Johnny's Donuts. The last thing that I will mention about the weekend is I saw the Mandarin Hotel, they blew it up here in
Right.
because they're gonna right, and I went
Why?
to a friend's office
Why did they blow it up? What was the
because 'cause they're
big
gonna
deal around
rebuild.
it?
Yeah.
That's like an
Well, it was I
institution.
think it was an institution, yes, and it's a beautiful location on, Brickell Key, and, of course, for many people, they hadn't for me, I'd never seen anything blown up other than the Twin Towers, so there was a lot of that, people that's why they did, a whole red, white, and blue theme. I sent you the video, they did
I saw.
fireworks, and I think there was a certain meta messaging, obviously, to blow up a building intentionally versus something that we saw on 9/11, so
Right.
there was an emotional piece of it, but on a more positive note, the office that I went to had like a fuck ton of donuts, which is like my happiest place ever. I mean, every kind of like, I think someone went into
What?
Dunkin' Donuts and said, I'll have 5 of everything. So
Too
I got
funny.
to eat the icing and the sprinkles and the whole deal, but I would trade it all in for one Johnny's Donuts in San Francisco, hands down.
I'm ready to ship myself a Suzy cakes, a marble cake. That's where I'm at. That's kind of
We're gonna
where
do that
yeah,
for,
a
an
a
event
baby
we're having
shower.
with you in June.
Well, they
I'm allowed
do
to say.
yes, we do have a baby shower coming in June. The other, but even before then,
So I guess it's okay when you say it, it's not okay when I
correct.
say it.
Correct. I am the gatekeeper of the
Oh,
I am
baby.
pregnancy gate. Yes, I am pregnancy gate. The other fun thing is I was thinking because in St. Louis, it's getting a little bit warmer and I have visitors coming in this weekend. And one of those visitors also happens to be my mother, which I do always laugh because my one preparation for my mother coming to stay with me is that I have to cover every single vent downstairs in my house to push as much air conditioning as possible to the upstairs bedroom so
Well,
that
I have a
it's
news
cool
for
enough.
you. I'm only sleeping there one night, and then I'm paddling down because your brother's coming. God forbid he shares a bed with me in any way, shape, or form, unless it's like some five-star luxury hotel in Paris where they only have a suite, and then he may, be willing. Otherwise, guess who's sleeping with you on Friday night?
Totally. You'll be sleeping with
Oh,
me, my husband will be out
oh,
of
baby.
town. Correct. Oh, baby is right. But my room is definitely that's easier to cool, so I am glad it's only for one night, but which I think leads us into our guest for today. Geoff Meyerson is CEO and co-founder of Locust Walk. Locust Walk is a global life science investment bank with a co-founder mentality. They drive life science innovation through transactions. And what's really unique about Locust Walk is that they partner with founders, executives, and board members to drive strategic transactions and create new companies to finance innovation. And even more to that, what we're discussing with Geoff in particular today, that's very timely and relevant, is that they have two offices, one in Boston and one in Tokyo. Geoff will talk to us and explain to us why China and Asia are so important for biotech and life science innovation in today's economy. Hello, Geoff, and welcome to the Kaplander podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so where are you in Boston today?
Right now, I'm in Boston, which is sunny and 72 degrees, a little not March weather, but no complaints on my side.
That's great. Well, maybe you should give us a little background. I mean, we actually, in a roundabout way, have known each other probably for decades through a lot of connections in San Francisco. But why don't you give an intro for those that are listening about who you are and what you're up to?
Sure. So thanks for having me. Good to see you both again.
Yes.
So for those of you who I don't know, Geoff Meyerson, my background is a little bit unique. I decided to kind of create the job that I wanted. So I did the investment banking thing. I did venture capital. I worked in big and small biotech companies and BD. And I realized that I like deal making as kind of a career. And so I thought, what could I do that would be entrepreneurial? Because that's kind of where my instincts are. And combining all the things that I've done in the past. So fall of 2008, the day Lehman Brothers went out of business, decided to start Locust Walk with one other colleague and haven't looked back since. It's been call it a 17-year nonlinear journey where I basically get to combine the best of bulge bracket banking, venture capital, and business development kind of all into one job. So that's me, and that's what I've been doing.
And you really focus on life science companies period. I don't see any, like, when I was looking through your LinkedIn, there is not a drop of tech anywhere in sight.
Yeah, I can't spell tech, but,
Yeah.
I'm a drug dealer, that's what I say. So my dad was a doctor. He said, "Jeff, if you're smart, you will not go into medicine." So I listened, which is why I figured instead of treating patients, maybe I can help equip the doctors with some of the drugs that they might be able to prescribe. And while I'm not really much of a scientist, even though I have a science degree, I thought deal making and science and business kind of all put together would be the most interesting career.
Yeah, I feel like, you and I share that in common in that, my dad is a PharmD and my grandfather was a doctor. My other grandfather was a pharmacist. And I have a family member who has juvenile diabetes. So I knew enough to be dangerous, but it was never going to be my calling that I was going to actually work in science or in medicine. But the whole appeal of patient care and then the business side of it really always intrigued me, and it feels like home working with people because in this, like, biotech and medical device and pharma industry, because there is a certain call and care to the patient and to being innovative in a way that has a little more purity than maybe some of the tech areas.
Yeah, look, if just all about making money, you can go into hedge fund or private equity, and that's fine. Lots of ways to make money. But at the end of the day, if you want to make an impact, I think it's a great career. And even when you don't remember every day that you're dealing with things that impact patients, that's kind of the benefit is that it actually does, even if you don't remember it, or it's not always front and
Right.
center. So
Right.
that's really the cool part of the industry.
My grandfather, Jody's father, is the
Oh, you're
pharmacist,
related?
and
I
so
never would have figured that out.
yes, right? We don't have the same hair, but we are definitely related,
We still have a lot of
and
hair. Even though we don't have the same hair, we have good
Yeah,
hair.
watch
That's a
it,
thing
Jody.
where
Come
Jeff is
on.
like, "You can fuck off with that," 'cause
Yeah. My dad had
yeah,
hair, so you wouldn't know that looking
you
at
have
me,
other
but
strengths, Jeff, that we don't have,
thank you.
so
Appreciate that.
there we go. Well, he was really such an I'm very close with him, and I've always looked up to him and admired him, especially in the career area, because he's really a very cup half full type of guy, and he's very innovative and ahead of his time in a number of ways. And so, with him being a pharmacist, when I got to college, I was like, well, I want to do pharmacy. And then I thought it was all great and good and had the, College of the Arts and Sciences, and was in chemistry, and I kid you not, I took the midterm and I saw a big fat D on that test,
you're
and I had
lucky you
never gotten a
passed.
D. I never got a D in my life, and I found myself in the they have all those advisors for your course and your GPA and all these things, and they were like, "Well, you can drop it, but you don't get the credit," and whatever it was. They're like, "Well, just try." A D is technically a passing score.
Right.
And I was like, so honestly, it got to the point I came home for winter break after finals, and I told my mom, I'm like, "Just by the way, you're paying out of state tuition for me to go to University of Wisconsin, and I am 100% gonna get a D in this class, but that's passing." And she was "Oh, like, okay, but what does this mean?" And I think it's interesting because you really do follow your parents on these things, like, where you either kind of follow in their paths because 'cause you're inspired by them, or they tell you, "I did this, I wouldn't recommend this, but here are options for you to be
Yeah.
involved in other ways."
Yeah. It's interesting because my brother works with me at Locust Walk, and he had the
Yeah,
same.
you mentioned that. We talked about this when you were in Miami.
So it's weird. So my dad was a doctor, my mom was a lawyer, and she never practiced. So my brother
Right.
became a lawyer, my sister became a doctor, and I was the only black sheep who's like, "Yeah, I'm not touching either of those."
You had other formal training. I mean, you have Wharton on your resume, so you obviously have a graduate degree. So you're not necessarily immune to having high levels of education. It's just in different areas.
Yeah,
What's
but
funny? So Locust Walk is the name of the company, and that's the street in the middle of the campus, University of Pennsylvania. So there is a subtlety to that. We weren't trying to be obnoxious about it and calling ourselves Wharton partners or something like that. But I don't
yeah.
Right.
actually don't focus on grad degrees. I tend to focus more, at least when I'm bringing people on the team, as to what school do they go to from a hard knocks perspective? Do they have the grit? Do they have the determination? I used to care about that because I went to Duke undergrad, all these fancy names, but I think it matters a lot less in this market, to be honest.
Yeah, I went to good old scrappy whatever. I went to University of Vermont, which isn't really scrappy, but I could never have gotten into the Ivy League schools, and I think
It's
that's
really
where
held you
the
back, Jody. I mean, you're a failure
I
because of
know,
it.
right? What I lacked in the intellectual part, I made up for in ambition. So I wanna get
Gravy.
into yeah. and attitude, right? When I lack in even ambition or capability, I'm a fake it till you make it kind of
Love
person.
it.
So I want to understand a little more about Locust Walk because you have a big presence in China and Asia, and that has been your model. And in some respects, you were a little bit ahead of the curve because, it has been a big part of the industry and the sector. But share with us, the approach and when you had that aha moment that this was the avenue to go on and how that fits into your business.
So it's interesting. We were, I would call it, behind the curve. The whole 2019 to 2021 China movement, where everyone wanted to go to China and get money from there or do deals there. We didn't have anything to do with that. We missed that because we didn't think there was much of an opportunity. I think
When you say
when
we,
things
you're meaning at Locust Walk. You
Locust
missed that.
Walk, yeah. I mean, we were like our advisory board said, "Hey, you guys should think about China," and we said, "Yeah, we're good." We were in Japan from 2013, so we were an early adopter there, but we really didn't really get serious about China until we saw the flow start to go from assets coming into China versus assets going out of China to the rest of the world. And when we saw that, we realized that, oh wow, this could actually be something that's a real sea change. And when we met this incredible guy who runs our China practice and had the right connectivity, it was quite clear that we had to really build more. And we're actually continuing to expand the team. We went from one person in China, and we were going to be at least five people in the next several months as we continue to grow. So I'd never been to China in my life. I went there for the first time December of 2024. I've now been six times, and I go
Wow.
four times a year. I also go to Japan every time I go to China. So there's a really strong Asian presence, but that's really where the deals are happening. Half of licensing deals in biotech are out of Chinese originated companies. So if we're doing sell side licensing and M&A as one of our two planks, we have to be there or there's no business. And what is unbelievable to me is why more advisors or investment banks are not doing the same thing. There's a lot of small advisors who are only in China. There's big investment banks who fly in, but there's really nobody who have feet on the street in mainland China and a US presence, which is what is really required to do this right. It's still surprising that no one's doing it. And I'll give the playbook. That is the playbook. Have a scientific
Right.
background, have the right team in place on both geographies, and focus on a broader mix of opportunities like licensing as well as M&A. There's the secret, but no one's doing it.
Do you think it's because of the regulatory changes in the United States that there's been such a focus on China? Or kind of what's your take on the why behind it?
So I don't think the US regulations has changed to encourage it. I think ultimately China has caught up from an innovation perspective. People thought of China as just a bunch of me too's, when the reality is they're actually innovative, increasingly more so. They can do fast followers, they can do innovative followers, and now they're even doing first in class assets as well.
Is there resistance though? I mean, you hear about when I was in Cambridge in the UK, and Morgan, you were there, and they were talking about doing deals with China, and it seemed like it was a little challenging. And even you and I have talked about how we can participate in as Thielander in the private
Yep.
company arena and have comp data that straddles both Asia as well as domestically in the United States. And it's there's no question that going to China, if you can't speak the language or you're a woman, can be harder.
Yeah, it's harder for a white guy, which from what I've learned, and this maybe is off color, but I'll just say it anyways. That's who they wanna meet. The what I've learned is that the Chinese wanna meet a male Caucasian in his
Right.
40s, and I thought, "Wow, this couldn't be better." Like, it's the first time I've heard that in multiple years, but that's actually the reality, and it's not because that's what I want, that's what the culture demands on their
Right.
side. So it is harder for a woman, it is harder for people who don't have the language skills. So it is there's still a barrier. It's hard for us. I've met some amazing people. We have some great clients, but ultimately, if you don't have, I'll call it a Sherpa, maybe that's just too loose of a term, but someone on the ground who could help to actually shepherd the process, it's really, really hard to do business there effectively.
Yeah, we've seen this in the UK and it's made a difference. I mean, Jody and I have been in the UK a minimum of 2 to 4 times a year over the last 2 years, 3 years of having a partnership with BIA. And every single time you go, you have more survey participants because when they see the data and they see you show up, it moves the needle. So
Yep.
I'm not surprised about your playbook because I think that really is the playbook, and 90% of it is just showing up. For shifting from the China lens back to Boston, why? I mean, obviously, Boston is a biotech and a life science hub. Where do you see and how are you implementing the global policy into Boston and to what you're doing domestically?
So there's a definite change in what's happening in biotech. Boston is still the leader, but it's being challenged. It's being challenged by people all over the world. I mean, Jody, where you live, I wouldn't call it a major threat, but there's a lot of investors that
It's
have come
coming,
down to
Miami, I
Florida.
mean, there's no right, I mean,
Yeah.
we never there was just a whole life science summit here, and
For
we're
2
gonna
weeks. There was 2 weeks of it.
yeah. I'd argue, by the way, just to double down on what Morgan's saying. I mean, Boston's been really hard to break into in terms of business. Like it's such Boston has a mindset, and I think it's good that it's being challenged because it's going to force everybody to appreciate that Boston is one footprint, but it is not the only footprint.
I had to move my family. I had 3 kids under the age of 4, moving from Philadelphia to Boston on my own dime because I realized this is the best place in the world, and if I wanna be a player or we wanna be a player at Locust Walk, we have to be based here.
Right,
So, I think
interesting.
you're right, it's very hard, just like in China, to cover Boston remotely, at least if you're in certain parts of the biotech industry. But what I would say is that there's a real opportunity for Boston and frankly for the US relative to China. Is it a threat? Absolutely. But maybe it just changes what biotech companies develop. Maybe they develop really early innovative science, or maybe they're able to take clinical stage assets and get global data and then get those commercialized or sold to pharma. That feels like the barbell is where things are going to be concentrated because the Chinese companies are still not nearly as good at the net new innovation, the 0 to 1. They're
Yeah.
much better at the 1 to 100, but from 100 to 1,000, that's still the US purview because they can't do global development, mostly because of the cost. I mean,
Yeah, but
they
also it's a different culture and it's a different mindset. Like I feel when I travel that the American mindset is still like the big badass in the room, no question, because we think innovatively, we think creatively, just like you moved your family and you did it. You were like, game on. Like if this is
Yep.
what it takes, I'm gonna do it. And there was no way that you were gonna back down. Like you were navigating, you saw it strategically, and you're like, fuck yeah, we're doing this, right?
Yeah, I mean, so my daughter is a freshman at UF, and the theme song at UF, if you don't know, is Tom Petty Won't Back Down. So I love that emblem.
Well,
It's
that's the part I wanna know. What are your theme songs? Like, everyone has a personal and you especially, because 'cause you've been you've had that, like, go for it mentality and you don't back down. So what is the mantra for you and your family?
I tend to zig when everyone else zags. That's been how I've operated in life. So out of business school, I took a job as BD director at a small biotech company. Everyone else I knew went to big pharma or they went to venture capital. I thought I wanted to go to venture capital as well. And I said, you know what? I need to get some real experience. And I learned more probably in 18 months at that biotech than I would have learned in 10 years at a pharma company. Not that I'm
Yeah,
so special, but I just kind of bet on myself. And then when I started Locust Walk, no one knew what Locust Walk is, so you have to create it. I had no idea what I was doing. That was hard as heck. I thought, oh, I just went
yeah,
to Wharton, got this big degree. People are going to want to work with me. No one cared. And
yeah.
you had to like build from the beginning. So it's just taking an opportunity and going with it. We were not the earliest adopters, but pretty darn early when it came to China. And now we're all in. We're continuing to drive there. We're not an only China firm. We still have US clients and European clients, and we continue
Right.
to drive there. I think the question is, well, how do you continue to iterate the business model? How do you continue to experiment? I mean, Jody, you have the same thing at your company. You've been doing this for a long time. How do you innovate? How do you go to new territories? Do you offer new services? You just got to be entrepreneurial.
I brought
It's
my daughter in
constant.
to be the lightning rod out there because it is easier, for somebody younger to think differently
No,
than you do.
it's not easier from the side of it. It is
Never
definitely
loses Morgan.
it's not easy. I have a constant, like, the mind piece where you're like, I have faith and it's all gonna work out and we're fucked. It's all going downhill. We're gonna be fine. No, we're not. Yes, we are. No, we're not. It's like,
That's more
playing
your
tennis.
temperament. But I think when
Right.
you come up with names and when you're reading an article, your lens on it is different than mine. And that creative piece, when you're a little further back in your career, like I am 30 years into this, it's different than when you're in the first decade of it, which is where you are,
Right.
Morgan. So, and Jeff, you're
Yeah.
somewhere in between. So,
Right.
wisdom and experience adds value in a certain way, but also does a fresh set of eyes on things.
Totally
Yeah.
agree. And look, you gotta be willing to adapt. I mean, if you make a mistake or you go in the wrong area or you have make some personnel decisions that are maybe not ideal, you have to be able to try to help coach or you have to drop something or do it something differently. So you have to be entrepreneurial and not be wedded to, well, because we made this decision, therefore we're doing it. Well, it didn't work, so we got to pivot. And we've made
Pivot.
plenty of
Yeah.
mistakes at Locust Walk.
Question for you about your MBA. And then I actually have 2 questions for you, but one, was your MBA worth it? And if you were to go back and make the decision again, would you do it again? Because I think there's a lot of conversations about the higher education piece, and some companies pay for grad school and then some companies don't but for an
Some
individual
companies
who's
pay you to
working.
drop out of college.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what's your opinion on it? You said that you don't necessarily care about where somebody went to school, you care more about the personality piece of it. So, what do you think?
It's a tough one. So I went to Duke undergrad, a ton of fun. I struggled to see the return on undergraduate education no matter where you go. I think you can make relationships and build friendships from that. And I'm not dismissing the value from that, but I don't think that's worth $400,000 at any school, to be clear, not just Duke. So it's not specific there.
If you say that it wasn't worth it at Duke, then the alumni group is gonna come for you. Saw what happened with what his name, Timothy Chalmant had something took a dig at the opera and the ballet, and now he's been harassed. So I'm glad you said it has
It's not a
nothing to
Duke
do with
thing. I
your
mean, sure,
yeah.
you can quote me, but it's not a Duke thing. I think it's a private education thing. I don't think it's worth it because I don't look for it as a hiring manager. So if I don't value it as a hiring manager, then why should anybody else? So it's a personal decision. Now, business school, which actually, Morgan, was your question, it depends on what you want out of it. I was always very entrepreneurial minded. I quit my job 15 months after graduating. I earned less money starting at Locust Walk than I made as a investment banking right out of undergrad. So you talk about all these starting salaries and all this stuff. I didn't care about that. I was willing to bet on myself. Now, the relationships I made from business school, it's paid for itself orders of magnitude over. I've made so much as a firm.
Yeah.
We've made so much revenue from just people that I've met through business school. I don't think of it that way, though. I think of it as just me being personable and trying to build
You couldn't
relationships
go
and
to
add
business
value,
school
but
if
it
you
helps.
didn't have undergraduate.
Well, I'm not saying you don't go to undergraduate. I'm just saying, do you really need to try so hard to get into such schools and spend all that money? And for what value does that add? So when I go to business school, for most people, I would say it's not worth it. For me, it was worth every penny and then some.
Well, Morgan, I know
Yeah.
you had a second question about how life science companies, so I know what you're thinking always with the AI.
Yeah, well, that's half my question. Is we have, we track a lot of pay premiums for companies that are paying individuals who have any skill set in AI or machine learning. So you investing and starting these companies within Locust Walk, how are you seeing life science companies use this new modern technology to stay innovative or maybe streamline processes and make things more efficient?
Well, it's funny timing you should say that because just last night we rolled out Claude Cowork to our entire company. And we're going to ask every person at every level and every role to create some automation. Some will centralize, others is just to share best practices. So we're not special at Locust Walk. I think every company is going to have to do that. I think that's not really biotech specific. That's just workflow specific to make people more efficient.
Right.
Now, specifically to
Why
R&D drug
Claude?
because Cowork is
Before
basically the gold standard of you can automate everything. And if you haven't tried it, I would strongly encourage you. It's $20 a month and you sure you can spend more, but it does some pretty awesome stuff. We could have a whole session
interesting.
on it. I just read everything there is to know. It's really cool. And I'm just starting on it. But
Yeah.
biotech specifically, I mean, R&D, there's AI drug discovery, there's drug development. You pick the right patients, you pick the right indications. How do you automate the recruitment? I mean, every part of the drug development equation can and will be impacted by AI. And it's not a question of if someone should be trained on it, it's can they use it? And if you're not willing or able to learn those tools, I think you're right. It will have a real negative impact on people's compensation and their career trajectories.
I think, I saw I think it was on Instagram, saying that the first thing that you should do is talk to every single AI agent, tell them what you do, what your job is, like, basically tell them everything that you're doing on your day to day, and then ask, "What can I be doing to automate? How can I be thinking about expanding? How can I think about multiple new revenue streams?" All these things. And, when you start getting into it, it is interesting. Some of it you look at and you're like, this is actually not feasible for us and what we actually do, like in reality. But it is
Yes.
interesting to start to see the answers that come out of it. That's for sure.
Well, you both know that you can't AI a sale, but you can AI automating the process of getting ready for a sale, the contracting process, the demo
Right.
process. There's just so much you can do to make it more efficient, but ultimately you still are selling one person to another, and you have to build that trust. And that is not something that I think, maybe this is me being a Luddite, but I think the drug development, the fundraising, the new co-creation, all that stuff is still going to be human judgment at the end of the day. And I think that's going to be the hardest thing to AI. But a
Right.
lot of workflows will be automated. The question is, can people adapt and level up their job?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jody, before you ask your question, I have one more thing about the on the AI topic before we switch. Is that do you see biotech companies obviously have proprietary data because they're doing clinical work? Do you have any concern about them feeding their proprietary data into an AI system and then it not being proprietary to them any
Like
longer?
open AI versus it's staying proprietary, as Morgan saying, confidential information that should not be out.
Well, look, I wouldn't throw it into OpenAI to use your analogy, Jody, but we worked a couple summers ago with a company in Israel called CytoReason, which their whole job is to ingest data from clinical trials and to use that to understand how a drug will compete with its competitors, which indications to prioritize, et cetera. And the company's model is they get to keep the data, but they don't release the actual underlying information to the other clients. And that makes it better for everybody. So there will be models like that, kind of a give to get, where you have to give your data up, and then you get analysis you would never get otherwise. Because even Pfizer is their
That's
biggest
our
customer. So
That's
it
our
goes
sur that
outside
is
of them.
quite literally our survey collection process. I mean,
Yeah.
truly, it is a give to get model. You give data, you get data back that you could maybe find somewhere else, but it's not going to be curated in the way that it is on our platform. So, it is really that fine line, I think, before and then I'm gonna get off the AI train with it, but it is something that I think a lot of companies straddle that line, especially in this more of an unknown but very fast-paced arena, is that you need to keep up. You need to be able to pivot, but you have to be cautious about what you're doing because once you give your data to these sources,
Can't
there's
get it
no
back.
getting it back.
No.
Yeah.
Give to get, and then it's a gotcha. Okay, I wanna move to one of my favorite subjects, which is packing. So when you go on all these trips, are you a carry-on guy or do you check a
I
suitcase?
thought you were talking guns and going to the range when you said packing, but
I'm sure that somebody would not like that
not going
conversation.
on the
I'm
not on
happy
the
to have a
plane,
gun
but,
conversation, but
if you ever wanna come with me, I have a nice place in Boston I'll take you to. I am it's tough because when I go to Asia, I'm usually there for 2 weeks, and one thing I also have learned about Asia is you typically should bring some type of gift or memento to the people that you're visiting, and that usually entails when I have so many meetings that I usually have, that I have to have a lot of stuff. So when I go
right.
to Asia, I'm usually taking a bigger check-in bag, but domestically, I would never check a bag if my life depended on it.
What kind of gifts do you take?
Okay, so since you asked, the Chinese have a very strong sense of brand, and my colleague there recommended I bring something from Harvard, and I said, "There's no
Oh,
freaking way I'm bringing a Harvard thing. I went to Penn. Seriously?" So we have a towel that has a memento of it. Basically, is a schematic of the campus, and it has Locust Walk written on it. And so that's
Oh,
important to
clever.
me because that's the name of the firm and it's still a reputable brand. And so every time I meet someone for the first time, maybe you're listening to this, you should expect to get from me, if you're one of the senior officers in the company, a nice towel from Penn. I think it's a nice touch. And believe it or not, I've gotten some great conversations. Oh, my son went to Penn, or my
Right.
wife
Right.
studied there. It actually creates an interesting bond. But even if not, it usually is well received. So you got to be thoughtful. You got to be small. These people have everything. You're not going to wow them
Right.
with a nice bottle of wine. You got to be creative.
Totally. We did our first, kind of client merch over the holidays, New Year's gifts, for data subscribers, and we sent them these Yeti mugs, and it had, the Thielander logo and, like, a little tagline on the back, and I was the packer, so I put every single one of them in these boxes with the gold foil and the little flyer and the whole thing, and I was you never know. I mean, we have not done this before. And some of the notes that we got back were so nice and
So
people were so
nice.
touched. They were like, I love this. Like it makes me think about my comp or keeps my tea warm and makes, hot thoughts about compensation. And you were like, oh, that's great. Like, um, you have, okay. So now before we've covered a lot of the work pieces of it, but obviously Jody and I are mother daughter. You said that you work with your brother. You also mentioned that you have 3 kids and the wife that goes with it. So, is it harder to run Locust Walk, or has it been harder raising 3 kids under a certain like, it sounds like they're all less than 5 years apart.
Yeah. So what I also didn't tell you is my mom was the very first team member. And so that was fun where I had to give her her performance review for the first 10 years of existence.
You were her
And Morgan,
boss?
I can just see you doing that to Jody. That'd be a
No,
ton of fun. I
I
want to watch that
no,
actually.
I'm in
There
charge.
is
Your
no
mother, you worked
mm-mm.
for you. That's a totally different.
No,
I'm just saying I had to do that and it was fun. But
no,
what
I very clearly work for Jody. I used to
Yeah,
joke on the side, I go, "My business cards did not say COO, my business cards say Jody's bitch," because
yeah.
all right.
that
Yeah.
really it is. I like that,
I'm
there's
head
no
bitch in charge,
confusion.
HBIC. Some people might have gone to
Correct,
HBS. I went to HBIC school.
correct.
School of Hard
That's
Knocks.
Jody's
I
master's
graduated
degree.
top of my class, Jeff.
Correct.
Yeah, so
Well,
have
look,
you learned more at home or so your first okay, we wanna hear it. So your mom worked for you, and that was interesting.
I got to tell you, it's been an interesting ride. My oldest child was born a year before Locust Walk was born, if I can call it that. And then my next 2 kids were born after Locust Walk. So I
Right,
kind of view Locust Walk as child number 2, and then child 3 and 4
right.
came after that. So I had 3 kids under the age of 4 at one point. And my wife did a Herculean amount of work to when I was traveling and trying to build the company. She ended up coming on board in 2018 and has been very helpful to help run the operations of the business
Yeah.
with reporting to my CLO. So thankfully and mercifully, I do not have to give her performance evaluations. We do not work directly together, although we certainly help each other. But my kids were exposed to it. I mean, Jody, it's probably similar with you with Morgan. She probably knew about this from her whole childhood, and
Yeah,
she grew up with the
totally.
business. She understood it, and she had to choose on her own or not to come join you. So I'm not saying my kids have to or will come in, but I love what I do. I'm not doing anything else. And if they want to be in biotech, I would help them to achieve their goals as well.
Well, it sounds like you're comfortable with having the family. I mean, I wanted Morgan to come in, and she obviously is here. And there was a point at which I wanted my son to come in. And I think at this point, it's the jury's out as to whether he would ever be interested. And I think at this moment, we'd all probably kill each other. That would be a safe bet. So that's likely not going to happen. But I will say that I learned some of my best lessons about how to be patient and, the having expectations a certain direction and then it going another direction from raising my kids. So what have maybe that's a good way to wind up in addition to hearing what you feel like is on the horizon. What are the best lessons you've learned from your children that have, helped guide you in tricky situations with work?
Yeah, you can't boss them around. You have to actually persuade. And so I've learned also to try to be more patient. I've gotten a lot calmer Jody, one of our mutual friends who was a former partner of mine, used to say, "Jeff, you used to vibrate." And he said,
Right.
you got to just calm down a little. And I've learned to be a little bit more calm. I don't know if my kids will agree with that entirely, but I do think that there's more of a level headedness that I've had having to deal with them, but just also just coming with maturity.
Well, because I say this often, it's a long game, big picture. And I think someone in your position and definitely my position, and Morgan knows this too. Okay, today may not be the best day, but that's just part of the deal. And if it is challenging or you're down, it's okay to say it, but you've got to stay calm and steady because like you, there's no other way for you. You're not going to go work for a company. You're not going back into investment banking. This is your passion and you love it and you're good at it. And if it some day sucks, you're like, that's fine. So tonight might be more of a cocktail night than, than others, but I'm waking up tomorrow and it's a new day. So with that, what is on the horizon? How you feeling about the rest of 2026?
I'm really excited about it. There's always ups and downs. There's always going to be a surprise. A little sneak preview that we are now launching new biotech companies. So the two things we do are licensing and M&A, mostly for small companies on the sell side, and new co-creation, where we take assets from clinical stage companies and they want help developing them on a global basis. We now have a development team that we've partnered with, and we are launching a new investment firm to fund those new cos that we're starting. So that's really exciting. We're hoping to formally announce this in the next few weeks, but you guys get the first sneak preview of that news flash.
Very fun. Well, we are extremely thankful that you took the time to speak with us and share all your insights on what's happening in biotech and, of course, your path to get there. So, thank you for joining us.
And next time you're in Miami to see that child or come for a family visit, I would love to get together.
I would love to see you, and I would just say that the window's getting shorter because once that summer comes, you're probably not gonna have a you're gonna have a harder time getting me down there. But come fall again, I'm yours. Happy to come say hi.
Okay, perfect. All right, Jeff, thank you.